It's an act of courage. Not everybody is willing to share aspects of their life, or if they want a book written about their lives, they would like it to be sanitized and only present that which they think makes them look and sound wonderful. But your book is not that. So what made you take that call to go ahead with telling your story?
Thank you, Shobha. To me as a person, I think you know me well enough from a long time. As you said, you knew my parents and you know me from ages. I've always stood a life where I can talk anything that I do on a podium in front of as many people as you want. Because I live my life according to my conscience and according to what I believe. Perception of people on what I do is important, but at the same time never determines how I lead my life. So for me to speak out openly about what I really feel and what my thoughts and values are and whatever I have led my life according to my conscience and my systems, what I believe in, I have no problem in anybody asking me anything about it, and you'll actually hear more from me than that is necessary to really write a book.
He says we'll get to know more about him than is necessary, which I think is such a Yash statement to be making. But what do you think most authors, most celebrities who share their lives think is necessary, and what did you think was in your book and your narrative unnecessary? Do you have any regrets about anything you've said in that book?
No, none at all. In fact, when I read it just very recently, of course, I was writing it, and Vishwavir was very helpful, and he really came across very beautifully whatever I'd said. Of course, the only reaction I had was there were certain parts of the book. I mean, I perceived the book always to be a little more somber, to be a little more serious, to be a little more introspective, because that's the more dominant part of my personality.
That's the next book, Yash.
No, there's quite a lot of that in this as well, but I'm sure, I've got lots more to say. As you know, I keep talking. So yes, it could be that way. So I always thought that the book should keep maintaining a more serious tone throughout. And there are certain aspects in the book which are kind of about my teenage years and about my going out and clubbing and partying and my friends, which I thought was a little, given a little larger space than I would have liked it to be. Because the dominant part of my personality is very serious, introspective, philosophical, spiritual, whatever. But then at the end of the day, as we say, that everybody, you have wide spectrum of readers. It should appeal to also the youth. You can't give them only what your serious side is. You have to give both sides. So that's the only thing I would have changed, if at all.
But for me, that was a very important component of your life, because at the end of the day, that's also what defines you. Yeah. And from the perspective of the young, and I know what an enormous fan base you have with the young in India and beyond. I can only share this with you that a couple of years ago, we found ourselves in London, and we were grocery shopping in the basement of one of the big stores. And there was Yash. He was also looking for health food, because he's very aware of what's good for his body. And really, we were both sort of trawling the aisles looking for the right kind of foods. And he was mobbed like any movie star from India would be mobbed. The people mobbing him were not just Indians, but they were people, South Asians. They were people from Pakistan. And Yash was so completely natural about that experience. And I've seen that happen repeatedly in Bombay. Whenever we've met in public places, I've seen people coming and asking you for autographs, asking to be photographed with you, so that you do have a rock star image. And in a way, I think you've played up to it in a nice and, this is who I am, take it or leave it. So I don't think the two things contradict themselves. I think your early days, in many ways, define who you are today, and will in no way take away from the spiritual core, which I know, and the readers will also discover at the end of the book, is at what defines you the best.
Thank you, Shobha. Flattering, whatever you said. But I must say, when I'm with you, I don't get so much attention, because all the attention's on you.
He's just being charming and modest, I can tell you that. But to get back to the writing of the book, how important is it to establish, and how soon did you establish that rapport and that level of trust with Vishwaveer? Because I know there were many times when you weren't always on the same page, and yet he managed to get so much about your life. And for me, the really moving parts of that narrative is Yash's relationship with his grandmother, for example. Yeah. When you asked, there's a very poignant chapter where he's missing his grandmother, and she's an old lady, very frail, and he just says, tu bas vapas aaja. And she says, darna mat, main aa rahi hu. Next thing he knows, his grandmother comes out, she's on a stretcher, she's that sick, and a few days after that, she passed away, and that was a turning point again for you of a kind which affected you greatly. And the introspection that Yash talks about comes through all the time in various moments and during the narrative. Particularly moving was his feelings when even I find it difficult to even talk about it, leave aside, read it, though I have marked it as something I'd like to read. When he sees his parents' bodies being prepared for the funeral rites, and he sees his mother, who he was very, very close to. Sujata was an extraordinary lady with such what I can only call joie de vivre, as was your father. And when he sees her body, and as he says, according to Marwadi tradition, she's dressed up in a chunadi, she's dressed up as a bride. And he sees his mother's face, and he doesn't want to let go. Then he sees his father's body. Father was unfortunately very badly burnt, and he sees the father's body being prepared, and he's asked to participate in those rituals. And they take them, then the bodies are taken to Ban Ganga, where of course the Birla family has had their ghat, and where the last rites are going to be performed. All of this is described, not just vividly, but you know what moved me much more is all that he's noticing on the periphery of what is happening, almost like an outsider. And this is where the philosophical part of him, I think, is at its most convincing. Because most people would be so racked and consumed by their own grief. He is weeping, he hasn't slept at all, he's come on a long flight, this 22-year-old boy, after being told on his campus that his parents are no more, he finds that out on that flight. There's a wonderful sequence because these were pre-cell phone days, and he's at London airport looking for coins to make that call, to talk to a family senior to find out what happened, because he has not been told till that point what exactly happened. All these things which he is seeing from a distance are making the whole book, it's like it's happening in front of your eyes. It's just riveting. I couldn't put the book down. I was reading it and rereading it even till the last moment, and marking out passages and saying, even to get yourself to be so transparent, so naked about a deep personal tragedy which you never ever actually come to terms with, to be able to do it, I mean, it's something, Yash, you've shared something very precious with all of us. And I hope it'll give courage to anyone who's ever been through such a deep loss to deal with tragedy. When you were discussing those aspects of your life with Vishwaveer and reliving them, how traumatic or how cathartic or how cleansing was it? Was it like closure, or you're still coming to terms?
Okay, I always say this, Shobha. Basically, as you said, even when I was living those instances, for me, from the early age of 14, I was very spiritually inclined. And in a way, I thought it probably is karmic, as it prepares you for what's to come. If I had encountered what I did when I was 22, if I hadn't got that strong background, probably I may not have been able to endure that sudden shock and grief. I don't know what might have happened. You may have gone on the wrong way. You may have gone into some mental issues, depressive issues. But it was like life preparing you for something which is going to come. So it's like, as you said, when I was there, of course I was grieving, but to some extent I was like a third person watching. And when I was talking to Vishwaveer, of course, as people say, time heals. According to me, time doesn't heal if there's a wound. It's only that what you used to perceive earlier with pain and sorrow, with understanding and introspection, it becomes a feeling of connection and joy. So when you miss people who've passed away, initially, just very close to when they passed away, there's a lot of sorrow because of the physical presence which is missing. But ultimately in life, when you're spiritual, philosophical, and you realize that you can feel the presence, the inspiration, the blessings of them at all times, at all major points of your life, then when you look back at the events, it's like instead of a tear, it's with a smile. So when I was talking to Vishwaveer, I've already passed through all these periods of my life where I did go through a lot of remorse. But but whatever memories I had is with a lot of joy and happiness rather than sorrow. So that's the feeling I experienced when I relived those moments. And they were not like old memories. They were like as good as new. And I actually felt it joyful to relive them, as I always do. Because to some extent, when you relive those moments, which today seem like a movie, because my life is totally different. The people are totally different. What I was in childhood, growing up with my parents, today it's a different scene altogether. You just realize that the things we delve on day to day in life, get worried about, get upset about, get angry about, are so transitory. Because what was yesterday is like a movie today. And what is today will be like a movie tomorrow. So you have to kind of let it just pass and live it with full awareness. Enjoy yourself, be happy, be blissful. But at the same time, whatever it is, it's going to pass. It's not going to be there forever. So that's what I feel.
It's also, in a way, I've always felt that your image of a very unconventional, non-conformist in business circles, the decisions you've taken as a businessman, a lot of it has been talked about in the last few chapters of the book. But do you sometimes feel that you were, in a way, a victim of that image? But you walk into a room and people immediately say rock star. They're not going to say businessman. And you've never tried to be anything else. Even in your office, the office environment itself, you feel like you're walking into some sort of an international, fabulous club with all the art and all the lighting and lots of paintings. It's not a conventional office environment. Was that something deliberate, and do you sometimes feel that went against you in terms of people taking you seriously as a business person?
Yeah, I think it did. There was a lot of perceptions both ways, positive and negative. What I believe is that you do not have to fit into a structure according to what is perceived. You have to make the structure according to what you get joy with, what your conscience allows you to do. And the structure falls into place by itself. Then whether people like it or don't like it, as long as you're comfortable with it, as long as it's giving you joy and it's doing nothing which is contravening your conscience, I actually would say I care a damn. So
he cares a damn. Let's a round of applause for that. It takes guts to do that, particularly in a very conservative environment such as family-run businesses.
Yes.
And you've pretty much written your own rules, broken your own rules, taken what comes with it. There is a lot of responsibility, and there are many hiccups. But what would also maybe come as a surprise to those of you, to those readers who have preconceived notions of who is Yash Birla, what is Yash Birla, what does he stand for, what is he all about, that you say, you talk very, very candidly again, that there are no intoxicants in your life, that you would never want to get high on something artificial, because you find life itself gives you that, provides that high for you. Also, when people think of you as sort of dancing like a dervish from in one nightclub of the world to the other, what most of the time you are dancing, yes you are, but it's at a satsang. And the music you dance to is not exactly what everybody's idea of club music is. And you've shared that in a very charming way, without sounding like, oh, I'm so superior, I'm so goody-goody, I don't drink, I don't do drugs, I don't smoke, and when I dance, it's a very different, it's almost like you're achieving your high through the satsang and the dancing. So do you want to just tell them about those moments in your life, which I know are very special and meaningful to you?
I think when you talk about dancing, whether you're dancing at a club or you're dancing at a satsang, it's basically joy. It's your inner joy being expressed in a movement. Why I feel that one doesn't need to camouflage it in intoxicants is because if you really live that joy, whatever you enjoy doing, whether it's dancing, going out, looking around, meeting people, you are kind of camouflaging or undermining that joy with intoxications because your awareness goes down. If you don't like the place, if you're not comfortable, you want to pretend something to be something that you're not, leave, go home, go somewhere else. Why go to a place, camouflage your instincts, your astuteness with intoxicants and pretend that you're having a good time? I don't believe in that. So wherever I went, either I went because I was really enjoying it, and if I didn't enjoy it, I would leave, whether it's appropriate or inappropriate, because you do things for yourself at some point of the day, like when you go out in the evening or the night. As far as satsangs are concerned, according to me, it's again the energy. It's a spiritual energy when a group of people are chanting the same thing and there is a euphoric kind of sentiment behind that chanting. The energy in that place, according to me, elevates to a different level. And a lot of times our thoughts are all over the world, but if